She was just a roadside plantain seller. Dirty dress, bare feet. No one listened to her. He was a billionaire, powerful, respected, untouchable. That morning, she saw him step out of his office, and something inside her broke. She dropped her tray, ran into traffic, and grabbed his wrist in public. Then she did the unthinkable. She ripped the watch off his hand. People stared. Security moved closer. "Don't wear this," she begged. "If you do, you will die." The billionaire froze. Because for the first time in his life, fear made him listen to a poor plantain seller. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to support our channel. The first thing Lola learned in life was how to wake up quickly. Not because she wanted to, but because the streets did not forgive slow people. She opened her eyes before dawn, her body stiff from sleeping on bare concrete. The cold from the night still clung to her bones. A passing bus splashed dirty water near her feet, and she jerked upright immediately, heart racing. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then reality settled in, under a closed shop canopy again. She rubbed her arms, stood up, and adjusted the faded dress she had slept in. It smelled faintly of smoke, dust, and old oil from the mechanic workshop nearby. She stretched slowly, ignoring the ache in her back. Pain had become a normal part of her body. By sunrise, Lola was already at the roadside where plantain sellers gathered. She counted her money carefully, small crumpled notes tied inside a nylon. Not much, barely enough, but enough to buy today's tray. The metal tray was heavy when she lifted it. She balanced it on her head the way she had taught herself years ago, neck straight, jaw tight. The plantains were neatly arranged, yellow and black spotted, ripe and sweet, her only source of survival. "Buy your ripe, sweet plantain." Her voice cut through the morning air as she walked. She passed mechanic workshops first. The smell of petrol and grease filled her nose. Men shouted over engines. One of them laughed when he saw her. "Plantain girl, come here now. You be like ghost." She forced a small smile and stopped. He touched the plantain, squeezed it, then dropped it back on the tray. "Too expensive," he said, and turned away. She swallowed the insult and moved on. At the construction site, dust coated her feet. Cement mixers roared. Laborers wiped sweat from their faces and stared at her like she was part of the scenery. One man bought plantain and refused to give her change. "Go," he said, waving her away. She wanted to argue. Her mouth opened slightly. Then she closed it. Arguing did not put food in her stomach. By mid-afternoon, the sun burned straight down, pressing heat into Lola's skin. Her legs shook from hours of walking. The tray felt heavier now, as if it had gained weight with every street she crossed. She slowed. Her throat was dry. Dust clung to her lips. She adjusted the tray slightly and wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. The street was loud. Cars honked. Traders shouted prices. A generator rattled somewhere behind a fence. Two men argued at a roadside stall. Life moved, busy and careless. Lola crossed the road, waiting for a bus to pass. Someone brushed her shoulder without stopping. Another person looked at her tray, then walked on. She reached the next junction and paused. Not for long, just enough to ease the strain in her neck. She shifted her feet, steadied the tray, and kept going. "Buy your ripe, sweet plantain." Her voice rose and fell into the noise of the street. Nothing marked the moment. Nothing warned her. It was only another step on a long road she had been walking her whole life. Raymond's mornings began in silence. Not the empty silence of loneliness, but the controlled quiet of a man whose life ran on schedules and decisions. The air-conditioned office was cool, almost cold, a sharp contrast to the heat outside. Floor-toiling glass looked out over the city, cranes rising in the distance like unfinished promises. He stood by the window, tie loosened, watching workers gather at one of his construction sites below, helmets on, boots dusty, movements purposeful. It gave him a familiar satisfaction, not pride exactly, but a steady sense that things were moving the way they should. On his desk lay neatly arranged files, contracts clipped and labeled. A framed photograph sat to the side. Two teenage boys in school uniforms, arms slung around each other's shoulders, grinning without fear of the future. Raymond and Ken. He picked up the photo for a moment, then set it down as the office door opened. "Morning, boss," Ken said. Raymond turned and smiled. "You're early." Ken shrugged, dropping into the chair opposite the desk. "Tifik favored me today." Raymond sat, flipping open a file. "We have a meeting at 11 o'clock, the ECOI project. I want the figures clean." "They're clean," Ken replied quickly. Too quickly. Raymond didn't notice. He trusted Ken the way one trusts habit without thinking. Ken had been with him from the beginning. When Raymond took loans, no one believed he could repay. When he slept in his office some nights, too tired to go home, Ken had been there eating takeaway on cardboard boxes, complaining, laughing, surviving. When the first big contract came through, Raymond didn't hesitate. He brought Ken in, made him manager, gave him access. The city watched Raymond rise. New offices, new properties, interviews, invitations. His name appeared in places it never had before. People shook his hand harder now, smiled longer, listened more carefully. Ken watched, too. When Raymond signed papers, Ken handed them over. When congratulations came, Ken stood beside him. When praise filled the room, Ken clapped last. "Another house?" Ken asked suddenly, glancing at a document on the desk. Raymond nodded, distracted. "Just closed it yesterday." Ken smiled. His lips curved upward, but his eyes didn't follow. "You move fast." Raymond laughed lightly. "It's not speed, it's timing." Ken leaned back in the chair, folding his arms. "Some people are just lucky." Raymond looked up. Luck fades. Work stays. Ken said nothing. Later that afternoon, Raymond walked through one of his sites. The sun was brutal. Cement dust hung in the air. Workers greeted him respectfully. He greeted them back, asking questions, listening, nodding. Ken followed, tablet in hand. Raymond stopped to help a laborer lift a fallen plank. The man stared at him, shocked. "Sir, no." "It's fine," Raymond said, already lifting. Ken watched, jaw tightening slightly. By the time they returned to the car, Raymond was dusty, sleeves rolled up, smiling like a man who still remembered where he came from. Ken opened the door for him. Raymond didn't see the way Ken's hand lingered on the car handle. Didn't see the look that flashed across his face, brief, sharp, buried immediately. Raymond had everything. And standing beside him was the one person who wanted it all to be his instead. Night came the way it always did for Lola, without warning and without mercy. By the time the streets began to quiet, her tray was empty. Not because the day had been kind, but because her legs had carried her until there was nothing left to give. She stopped under a flickering streetlight and counted the coins in her nylon bag, shielding them with her palm. It wasn't much. She tied the nylon and slipped it inside her dress, pressing it flat against her stomach. Hunger sat sharp and familiar in her belly. She bought a small wrap of food from a roadside woman and ate slowly, chewing each bite like she needed it to last. When she finished, she wiped her hands and walked on. She found a place beside an unfinished building, concrete pillars standing tall and hollow in the dark. She chose a corner near stacked cement bags, laid down a flattened carton, and sat for a moment, rubbing her calves until the ache softened. The city breathed around her. A radio played somewhere nearby. A dog barked once. Laughter drifted in and faded. Lola lay back and stared at the patch of sky between broken walls. Sleep did not come. Her mind slipped backward to a day she tried very hard not to remember. She had been younger then, smaller, her tray lighter. A woman stood by the roadside ahead of her, laughing into her phone, one foot already stepping off the curb. Cars rushed past fast, impatient. Lola felt it then, a sudden urgency she couldn't name. "Auntie?" she had called out. The woman didn't turn. "Auntie, wait, don't cross." The woman glanced back briefly, eyes annoyed. "Mind your business." She snapped and stepped forward. The sound came too fast. A horn, a scream, a body hitting metal. People ran. Someone shouted. Blood spread across the road. Lola stood frozen, her tray slipping from her head and crashing to the ground. Then someone pointed at her. She was talking to her. "What did you say to her? Why were you shouting?" The crowd turned. Faces hardened. Voices rose. "She caused it. She's a witch." "I saw her." Hands grabbed at her dress. Someone shoved her. Another slapped her tray aside. "Witch. Confess. Hold her." Fear ripped through her body like fire. She broke free somehow. She never remembered how and ran. She didn't stop until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. She hid under a bridge until morning, shaking, listening for footsteps that never came. After that day, Lola learned something the streets did not teach gently. Words could kill you, silence could keep you alive. So she stopped speaking when she felt the urge to warn. She stopped reacting when something inside her stirred. She learned how to look away, how to keep walking, how to survive. Now, lying on cold concrete years later, she rolled onto her side and pulled her dress tighter around herself. The night air pressed against her skin. She closed her eyes and breathed slowly until the city noise blurred. Tomorrow would come. Another tray, another road, another day of keeping her mouth shut. Sleep finally took her, thin and restless, while the city moved on, unaware of the weight she carried and the reason she never spoke. The night that changed something in Ken happened at a dinner party. It was one of those events where everything shone. Crystal glasses, polished floors, soft music floating through the air, men in tailored suits and women wrapped in expensive perfume filled the hall, laughing easily as if nothing in the world could touch them. Raymond moved through the room like he belonged there. People turned when they saw him. Smiles spread. Hands reached out. Raymond. Ah, the man himself. "Your last project in Lakey was impressive." Raymond laughed, shook hands, accepted compliments with the same relaxed warmth he used everywhere else. Ken followed half a step behind. At first, no one noticed him. Then someone asked, "And you are?" Before Ken could answer, Raymond spoke easily. "That's Ken, my manager. He's been with me from the start." The smile returned to the man's face, but only briefly. "Oh, that's nice," he said, already turning away. Ken stood there holding a glass he hadn't asked for, nodding at conversations that never included him. When servers passed, they reached for Raymond first. When business talk started, chairs shifted, always away from Ken, never toward him. At one point, a woman leaned close to Raymond and said quietly, "You built all this yourself?" Raymond smiled. "I had help." She laughed lightly. "Of course." The words were kind. The meaning was not. Ken felt it then, sharp and humiliating. He wasn't invisible because he lacked value. He was invisible because the room had already decided who mattered. Later, as Raymond was pulled aside by a group of investors, Ken stood alone near the bar. A waiter brushed past him without apology. Someone placed an empty glass in front of him without asking, like a bottle holder, useful only when needed, forgotten immediately after. When they finally left, the night air was cool. Raymond talked excitedly about new opportunities, his voice filled with plans and trust. Ken listened, and inside him, something hardened. This wasn't about friendship anymore. It wasn't even about money. It was about standing in rooms where your name meant nothing while another man's meant everything. That night, lying awake, Ken stopped asking why life chose Raymond. He began asking how to change the choice. Ken's jealousy crossed a line he could no longer pretend he hadn't seen. After the dinner party, the image refused to leave him. Raymond at the center of the room, light and laughter gathering around him naturally, while he stood at the edges, tolerated but never invited in. Even when Ken closed his eyes, he still felt it. The polite smiles, the turned backs, the quiet way the room had decided who mattered. Sleep became difficult. At night, Ken lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of electricity, replaying moments he could not change. Every laugh at the party replayed like mockery. Every compliment Raymond received felt like something stolen from him. He stopped wanting success. Success felt too slow, too uncertain. What Ken wanted now was absence. He wanted Raymond gone. The thought scared him at first. He tried to reason with himself, tried to remind himself of years of friendship, shared childhood, shared struggle. But the thought did not fade. It settled. It waited. It returned every morning with him and followed him through the day until one evening Ken got into his car and didn't turn back. He drove far beyond the familiar roads, past places he no longer recognized. The city lights thinned, then disappeared. The road narrowed, swallowed by trees and darkness. When he finally stopped, the silence pressed in on him, thick and heavy. The shrine was hidden, almost forgotten, as if it existed only for people who were desperate enough to find it. The air smelled of damp earth and smoke. The native doctor sat still as though he had been expecting him. He looked at Ken once and spoke calmly. "You came to remove a man from your path." Ken felt his chest tighten. He hadn't said a word. The native doctor explained without emotion, as if describing the weather. A charm, quiet, clean, something tied to an object Raymond wore often, something close to his body, a wristwatch. After 3 days, the man said, "He will fall. It will look natural. No struggle, no suspicion." Ken listened carefully, his heart beating hard but steady. "And the cost?" he asked. "If the charm is broken," the native doctor replied, "your mind will break with it." Ken nodded. The risk did not frighten him. Not anymore. The next morning, Ken walked into Raymond's office like he always did. Same smile, same easy posture, same tone. "Bro," he said casually, "can I wear your Rolex? I have a date tonight. Mine stopped working." Raymond laughed, already removing the watch. "Take it," he said. "Just return it tomorrow." Ken closed his fingers around the metal. It felt heavier than it should have. He didn't go home. He drove straight back to the shrine and placed the watch in the native doctor's hands. Rituals were performed, words spoken low, things done that Ken refused to think about. When the watch was returned to him, the warning was repeated. "Do not wear it, and if it breaks—" "I understand," Ken said. He didn't wait to hear the rest. The following day, he handed the watch back to Raymond. Raymond glanced at it and smiled. "You can keep it. I have others." Ken shook his head. "You like this one? Besides, I already bought another." Raymond shrugged and slipped it on. Ken smiled too. Inside him, the waiting began. 3 days. That was all that stood between him and the life he believed should have been his. The second day after the meeting began like every other day in Raymond's life. The office compound was already awake. Security men stood at the gate. Staff crossed the parking lot with files under their arms. Engines hummed. Phones rang. Nothing felt unusual. Raymond stepped out of the glass building, adjusted his suit, and walked toward his car. His briefcase hung loosely in his hand. His mind was calm. Across the road, Lola moved slowly, her tray balanced on her head. "Buy your ripe, sweet plantain." Then she saw him. Her body reacted instantly. Her chest tightened, her breath caught, her heart began to race violently. "No," she whispered. Raymond reached his car. Lola stopped shouting. She gently lowered the tray from her head and placed it on the pavement. The plantains rolled slightly, forgotten. She rushed toward him. "Sir?" Raymond turned. Before he could speak, Lola grabbed his wrist. "What?" he started. Her fingers closed around the watch and she pulled it off his wrist with sudden force. "Hey!" Raymond snapped. "What do you think you're doing?" People nearby slowed. A security man glanced over. Lola held the watch tightly, her hands trembling. "Please," she said urgently, "please don't wear this watch." Raymond stared at her, stunned. "Why shouldn't I wear my own watch?" She shook her head, panic rising in her eyes. "Just don't," she begged. "Please." "That's not an answer," Raymond said sharply. "Why?" Lola opened her mouth, closed it. Her chest rose and fell quickly. Raymond stepped closer. "You grabbed me in public. You took my property. Now tell me why." Her grip tightened. "Please," she repeated, her voice cracking. "Just trust me." "Trust you how?" Raymond demanded. "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" She shook her head again, tears forming. "If you wear it," she said, barely above a whisper, "something terrible will happen." Raymond's jaw tightened. "What terrible thing?" "Silence!" People had stopped pretending not to watch. Raymond waited. "Answer me," he said slowly. Lola couldn't. Her lips trembled, her eyes filled. "Please," she whispered again, "just don't put it back on." Raymond stared at the watch in her hand, then at her face. For the first time, doubt crept into his eyes. "How do you know?" he asked quietly. Lola swallowed hard. The answer sat heavy in her chest, but she didn't say it. The air between them felt tight, dangerous, expectant. Raymond looked down at his bare wrist, then back at Lola. Comment part 2 if you want the shocking continuation of this story.